Good evening, I'm Jim Barber. I'm running for Charlotte County School Board District 4. Currently unopposed, but not for long probably. Somebody's probably going to throw their hat in the ring. I'm not the historian that Ted is. I'm a historian around here of a different sort. A historian of whiskey corners in Englewood and the days when Pine Street didn't connect. The story behind how they got Pine Street to connect, and the story of maybe my brother and a couple of kids who were playing with matches, and all of a sudden the two counties decided, oh, we need to connect Pine Street because they were doing some things they shouldn't have done. And
Firely?
Yeah, something like that. I missed all the good stuff back then. Somehow they, I was studying or doing something else. But I'd go from my walk down the street on South Oxford Drive from the house I grew up in and slightly into Sarasota County, across the county line into Charlotte County to my best friend at 1260 South Oxford Drive. Back in the day where the street lights came on, and Englewood was that kind of town. The county line didn't make any difference. So I've been around for a long time. My mom and dad moved to Englewood in 1977, South Venice, about 5 years before that, after my dad got out of the Air Force. And so I was a local graduate of Lemon Bay High School. So
I was there last night.
What's that?
I was there last night.
Were you there? You work that? Is that where you teach?
I was at the varsity girls soccer, this advanced sectional.
Yeah, district champs. So I'm as local as they come. Like a lot of young people, I left when I was 20 to go try to find fame and fortune, and basically I hit the first city north of Tampa, which was Atlanta, and spent 25 years in Atlanta, Georgia, partially because it was the first city and partially because a couple years earlier my parents moved up there, and I had a baby, and it was a good place to go and get into the real world and make some money as a young man and stake my future. But I always came back here because this place has always been special to me. I've always loved Charlotte County. I've always loved Englewood. I bet I made, in 20 years, I bet I made 75 trips back down here just to see people and friends. And I don't have any actual blood family here anymore. They've all been gone for a long time. I'm running for school board, for several reasons. It's kind of been an evolution. My wife teaches, so one of the reasons is watching her what she went through with the cancellation of the 1920 school year, the masking of the kids in 2021, and Sarasota County. She teaches in Sarasota County. Started that in 21-22, and she's a theater teacher, so it's been very difficult for her. It's her passion, her dream job. She got her dream job second year that she was a public school teacher. Third year she's a public school teacher. Second year in Sarasota County, and she was this close to done. This close to quit. I'm not doing this. It's against everything I believe in to force these kids to do this. She's probably the only libertarian theater teacher in the country. But she was right there on the edge, and I supported her every step of the way. And I thought maybe we'd move into Sarasota County because I'm kind of pretty intimate with that for a while, with what's going on there, and decided I didn't want to do that. And I looked at Charlotte County and I watched the meetings and realized, okay, all right, it's not that bad here yet, But all you've got to do is look north and look south and understand that the barbarians are at the gate. That all the things that we hold near and dear, they're trying to take it all away in Sarasota and Lee County. Critical race theory is a big deal in Sarasota County. They've got an illegal equity committee. They've got, obviously they mask the kids up there. They're not doing what they need to do to educate our kids properly up there in traditional curriculum, in my opinion. So that's a big reason why I started to run. The other reason is kind of a big overarching principle. I kind of feel like if we as conservatives got more involved in these races 50 years ago, we wouldn't be here right now talking about this. I wouldn't have to do this. We could have stepped this off a long time ago. It didn't have to be this way, but here we are. I'm going to run, I'm going to win, and when the time comes, there'll be at least one person on the Charlotte County School Board that says no to some of the nonsense that's going on out there.
is the proper role of government in education and your job as a school board member?
Well, the proper role of government in general is to protect the individual as outlined in the Bill of Rights. My idea is to limit what's going on as far as the big overreaching things that are going on in society today. The revisionism of history, all couched in critical thought. That America is evil because America was founded on slavery. You know, it's those kinds of ideas that we need to push back on and keep out. The idea that it's okay for biological boys to play girls' sports. I have 2 daughters. You know that.
And use the bathroom of their choice.
And use the bathroom. Yeah, we're getting to the point where boys can use girls' bathrooms. And that's what's considered critical thought right now. That gender is a social construct. No, gender is biological. You're born the way you're born, period.
What you feel like being. But what I want to ask you about is, do you foresee doing anything to put more emphasis or more help and financing towards charter schools in the county? They are part of the system, and we've got one that we're working on right now to get started based on the Hillsdale method.
Absolutely. Charter schools are almost always a success. They're little incubators. They get away from the bureaucracy of the school board. I would 100% be in favor of that idea. More charter schools. I'd be in favor of, say, a committee to see what private schools do right. Why is it such an adversarial relationship? Well, I know the answer, but why is it an adversarial relationship between public schools and private schools? It doesn't have to be that way. You know,
It's the different molds.
it is a different mold.
Would the county possibly be helpful for help charter schools in obtaining property for their buildings?
No, I think that's legitimate if it fits within the idea of being a good steward of the taxpayer money. You know, I mean, you need to add charter schools, and you need to be able to obviously acquire property to do that. And if that's within the budget and can be done, then it absolutely needs to be done. But it needs to be done the most frugal way possible.
Is that when you're looking at the board, what have you seen as the meetings transpire or the actual processes go in place that you would oppose that is currently going on? And then secondarily, I'm an educator I'm a multiple generation educator, and I'm still teaching, and I've worked in Charlotte and Lee County and also other places in and out of the country, contemplating actual vouchers, not just charter, but moving your money to whatever area you thought would be appropriate.
Well, first, I think if you're a taxpayer and you're paying for schools, you should be able to send your kids whatever school you want to send them to. You want to use a voucher scheme to do that? That's fine. I wouldn't have no problems with that. I mean, Florida at least has reasonably decent school choice between public schools and for charter schools, so it's not as bad as it is in some places where you're stuck. You know, you're 100% stuck. As far as your first question goes, you know, the school board meetings in Charlotte County usually don't last long enough to nitpick too much. My God, I think they got out of there in 19 and a half minutes last time. You know, they sat around, they patted each other on the back, congratulated themselves for getting a 91% graduation rate, and called it a day. Hey, look at us. Oh, and we're going to spend $380,000 on video equipment so we can, go ahead and stream these meetings live. Which, by the way, they need to stream the meetings live because, as we know from Sarasota County, they will take and they will edit that and they will make it look like something it isn't. They do that. But $380,000 is not being, in my opinion, a good steward of the taxpayers' money. Why? Because we can probably flip a switch on that camera for $199 and we can go live on Facebook right now. So where do you come up with $380,000? I mean, I haven't seen all the details. Is there a salary involved in it?
Vendors.
Well, if there's salaries involved in there, why in the world are we paying people when we have 3 high schools and a technical college to draw from for kids that could literally come in and do that for free, put it on the resume, and have that to show colleges. No. We can't seem to do that. We have to pay people to look at to point a camera at something.
Particular people that might be related to other people on the board.
Particularly people that may or may not, or probably are related to other people on the board.
One of the things that I think answered the question about the problems was not the money, but the unions. Teachers are very liberal, and the reality is that, or the reality might be that whatever the board decides in terms of curricula and things like that, the teachers can nullify it because they, they think that they know better. And my experience, I was an instructional design guy for the military. And a lot of times the teachers on the floor, they thought, well, we never did it this way before. We're going to continue to do it the way we want to do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think overall you're right. I think it's obviously a relatively liberal profession. I think locally, I don't think that's quite as accurate as you think. I mean, and to be on point here, I said she was the only libertarian theater teacher. So, but nationally, yes. Locally, I don't think that our staff is nearly as liberal as you might think.
He's right.
What's that?
He's right.
So it's not quite the problem that it is elsewhere, but it's something that has to be, an eye has to be kept on. So we also have a student body that's not as liberal because the teachers aren't as liberal. So I think it was last year a teacher was let go at Lemon Bay because that teacher was running her mouth about she was the authority, not the parents, and some kids videotaped her. And so we all have.
That's kind of why I was saying.
So we have a police force in quotes with the students who are trying. They're doing it for different reasons, but they're trying to get the gotcha moments on their Instagram and their Facebook, and so some of that takes care of itself, and some of it's up to administration, has to go in there. They have to have clear guidelines on keeping that kind of political talk out of the classroom. Just teach math, teach social studies, keep your opinion out of it, and if you don't, there's going to be repercussions.
Kids will tell their parents.
Okay. You are not the kind of person they want, right? Because you're against CRT and all that stuff. And do you think there's a chance that they try to commit fraud to keep you out?
No, I don't. I actually don't think so. And I'll tell you, I know we talked about this at it obviously has nothing to do with the school board. And I didn't say I didn't think there was fraud in the 2016 election. I just didn't think there was enough to flip the
Have you changed your mind?
No, I haven't changed my mind, and I'll tell you what, I don't want to change my mind, because if I change my mind and I think that the election was fraudulent and stolen, then what are we all doing here? I mean, why would you ever vote again if you really thought that the election was stolen?
I'm trying to make it so that they don't do it again.
I agree with all the investigations that have gone all across the country. Arizona, I agree with those 100%. Turn over every stone. Investigate it all. If there's something that's wrong, let's fix it.
There's no.
There's no way they can steal it right now. If they put up a candidate that is against me, then we'll go through all. Florida didn't have a bunch of problems in the election, right?
No,
I mean,
no.
Back in the 4 years ago, when DeSantis got elected,
I want you in. I don't want Democrats and CRT people in.
I want me in, and I don't want Democrats or CRT people in either.
All right.
So we're in the same boat as far as that goes. But the mechanism to get me elected is for people to vote for me. And if you really believe that they're going to steal it from me, then get out to a polling place and make sure that they don't.
I did it in 2006.
Excellent.
20.
Excellent.
Did it.
But I can't stand up here and say that I think the entire election was stolen, because if I think that, then it's over. This experiment that is the United States is done. It's just done.
You're right, it is.
And look, at the end of the day, you might end up being right about that. I could be wrong about that. I leave open the possibility that I'm wrong. You know, but I hope to God I'm right. That it was that the president lost, and it wasn't because of fraud.
As far as school board meetings, nobody shows up to them, and so there's really no transparency what's going on. So how would you get parents who are involved, come to these meetings, to start getting more transparency?
Well, the first thing that I would do is I would move the time of the meetings. Okay, you can't have parents or teachers show up to a 5:30 or 6 o'clock meeting. It's just not feasible. It's not fair. Teachers have families. Students obviously go in. You can't do it. I mean, it's one meeting a month. You can have it at 8 o'clock and run till 11 o'clock. The world's not going to come to an end. You know, we're getting paid to do a job. We can do it when we can have transparency, like you say. Now, being able to go live will help. And I'm one vote. I can tell you right now, they're not going to move it just because I run my mouth and Dave to move the meeting. It's going to take 2 election cycles to get people that are willing to actually do that.
I just wanted to add to what you're pointing at here. If I understand correctly, there's basically where the meat is made is in an earlier meeting at like 9 in the morning, a 9 o'clock in the morning meeting. The workshops where everything is really worked out is going to be during our working hours, and then the formal 17 to 20-minute meeting is at night. I wonder what you think, how that might be addressed. I'm really curious.
If it was up to me, I'd separate the 2 meetings. I'd have one on Monday and one on Tuesday, and they'd both be in the evening so people could attend. The workshops, I've been told 2 different things as far as the workshops go. I've never seen anybody speak at the workshops. We were told we put a bunch of butts in the seats at the workshop back in the beginning of this school year, when Charlotte County commissioners were thinking about masking up the kids, and we had 60, 70 people, Melissa, something like that. So we got to show up to a workshop that nobody was allowed to speak at. We just sat there and we stared at them.
And they didn't want us to clap.
And they didn't want anybody to clap. And that was actually the workshop that threw me over the top for running, because the person who is in my seat now, he and I paraphrase, said if I had 5 votes, I'd mask these kids up. So
He was video conferencing when I was there.
yeah, so that was actually the straw that broke the camel's back on me deciding to run. But that's how I would deal with the workshop. If it was up to me, we would split those 2 things up. We would have a workshop one night, we'd have the meeting the next.
Yes, sir. I got to get back to my separation of education and state. I look at education as a service. Like every other service, parents would find value in having their kids educated, and they would go and hire a school. They'd send their kid to a private school. There wouldn't be any compulsory taxation. There wouldn't be any compulsory public education. It would be free. You want to send your kid to a Christian school, send your kid to a Christian school. And send them to a non-religious school, send them to just whatever floats your boat. That's the way I think it should be. And I know that there has been imposed upon us a public school system, and I know that running for the Board of Education, you have to work within that. But if you had your druthers, would you favor the idea of just a complete abolition of the entire compulsory schooling model and move to private?
If it was up to me, absolutely. 100%.
What power does the school board have over the curriculum?
She's thinking about the teacher's activism.
So it's a good question, and I'm going to be 100% honest. I don't know the complete 100% answer to that.
Who does?
I believe principals is where this all starts, within the schools. And
It's the state.
I get a state.
It's the state.
It's not the
State.
state.
You know,
The name is state, but the state is responsible. Yeah.
The standards of the state, the district is in charge of like how you implement the standards within the curriculum.
right. So the school board doesn't have a ton of say over it, but the school board does have some say. I mean, the school board can't get booked. We watching it happen in Tennessee with the school board banning books. So there is some say, but you know, parents have to get involved, and we need more of that too. We need more parents involved.
The simple answer is the state is what and the district is how.
The question is, does the school board, in a lot of cases, the local school decides which text, depending on the kind of students they have, which text to buy from where, and the texts themselves can meet the standards in various ways. So if the school board takes a look at the texts that are part of the curriculum and objects to it, which some school boards have done for certain curricula, then that could be a good use of the board.
I can tell you if you want to be a great use of the board.
You're on the committee?
I've been on committee. So what happens is that the state generally has a crony deal with like Person or whatever companies, and they give you a selection, and then the boards vote on which one they want. And this committee of teachers and administrators and whatever, they go through and they review the books. They have people come in from the companies, they make a proposal. I heard a really funny story about a lady with big boobs who like convinced the old men block to vote for a book. I'm not even joking. And, whatever, this is a real true story, because I met the men and I met the women who were really pissed. So whatever the case may be, it's really state saying what you need to teach and what the choices are, and then you have the district deciding overall how to implement the plan.
So I mean, I'm not afraid to admit what I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I don't know, and I'm not in it. I haven't spent my life as an educator. Just the conversations I have every night with my wife about it. So those are the kinds of things I'm still coming up to speed on as far as processes and how that all plays out.
America's become a country in which government affects every area of our lives. Would you suggest and fight for actual intense civics teaching and civics courses that teach things like the original intent of the founders of our country, intense training on the original intent of the Constitution, and even how our state and local governments are set up?
Yes.
Can
I need a lot of explanation.
Well,
I mean, it's,
you don't have enough authority to do it.
Well, you know what? We can try. You know, I mean, that's what we can try. Teach civics and teach history right.
Very good. How do you propose teaching the full history of our country, including slavery and racial discrimination, without erasing parts of history and also without teaching racial bias, division, and personal guilt in the present time?
We already do that. We already teach all this. We already teach all this.
This is what CRT is.
No, CRT, we already teach facts. CRT is taking the facts and spinning them around, so the only person that can teach history, it can only be taught through the view of the oppressed.
So without teaching it that way, that's what I'm saying.
And you just teach it the way it's taught now.
You don't think they're teaching critical race theory?
Well, they're trying to teach critical race theory. They're injecting parts of critical race theory. They're little itty bitty things, because critical race theory has been rejected for so long. They realize they've got to start getting these little parts of it in every little level of education, and that way they can teach it in college. And they can make it stick in college. Because when you've got 22-year-olds 10, 15, 20 years ago rejecting CRT, they realize, oh, crap, we got to figure out how to get them a little more indoctrinated by the time they get here. And that's what they're trying to do.
What do you believe is the proper role of the parent in education, and how can you support that role?
Well, I've been as involved as I possibly could be with my daughters. I think that's a question that every parent has to kind of look in the mirror and decide on their own. And you've got parents that range from free-range parents to helicopter parents, and you know, I believe in parents' rights, and I believe in parents' rights to raise their kids or be as hands-off with their kids as they want to be.
Do you believe there are any similarities between how schools and prisons operate? If so, can you list some of those similarities?
Well, I think prisoners have more rights than students.
That's brutal.
The obvious similarities being, or dissimilarities, prisoners don't get to go home at night. But it's the same kind of square peg through a round hole as you get in prison. You know, public school is not a place where it's personalized, it's more institutionalized. And it's, you know, mostly it's a function of how government operates and generally does things poorly. And I think we need to figure out a way to do more personalized round peg, round hole situations in public schools.
Do you believe that any child or teacher should be forced to accept, should be forced to wear a mask or any piece of apparel? What would you do as a board member?
No, I don't think any child should be forced to wear a mask. I don't think any teacher should be forced to wear a mask. I don't think any child should be forced to get a COVID-19 vaccine. I don't think any teacher should be forced to get a COVID-19 vaccine. Did I miss anything?
No.
That cover all that? All right.
I had my parents, my graduation was outdoors. They were chanting, "Take off the mask, Mr. Kankar," at graduation. They were screaming, and I threw it, and I never wore it again.
Nice.
It was great.
Awesome.
What rational and constitutional means do you believe would curb or could be used to curb violence and bullying in a public school?
I'm sorry, rational and what?
Constitutional.
Violence, bullying, and sexual attacks.
You know, kids have been kids for a long time. Kids have bullied each other for a long time. I'm not going to use rite of passage because it's still not right. I mean, I was a little skinny, little geeky boy, you know, in high school. I caught hell for it. You know, ultimately at the end of the day, it's crazy, but you know, for all the evils of technology, there's a good side of technology too. You know, the problems for kids today are not that much different than the problems that I had 40 or 35 years ago. The speed at which those problems travel is different, but the technological ability for our kids to defend themselves against being bullied exists now too. So I'm not going to say the playing field's level on that, but it's kind of come around that the same tools that we gripe about with kids can be used to help the same kids. So constitutionally, you know, without putting more authority into schools, you're ultimately going to have to rely on the goodwill of kids to report these things that are going on with other kids. And a lot of kids do that. You know, I hate to use my wife all the time, but that's my conduit to schools right now. Yeah, she gets kids come to her all the time, and bully's a buzzword, you know, because the kids use it now in ways that it really was never meant to be used. And so she got to ask questions like, okay, let's sit down, let's talk about this, because once she determines that the B word is really happening, she's got all sorts of things she's got to report, and it becomes a real issue. But I mean, ultimately, we do the right things and we keep the hearts and minds of kids right. I think that problem will take care of itself to the extent that it can amongst kids.
Real life situation.
Yeah.
You find out a student's being abused by a teacher. You report it to the principal, who says it's not her problem. She's turned it over to the police. What do you do about that principal?
Okay, so let me make sure I follow this here. Students being abused by the
teacher.
Oh, by a teacher.
The principal's made aware of it, and since they've reported it to the police, not their problem. How do you handle that principal?
It's not the school. Wait, who reported it to the police?
Oh, you're innocent till you...
Another person already went to prison. A student is being abused by a teacher.
Right.
The student notifies the authorities.
Okay.
The parent notifies the school, and the principal refuses to do.
Okay. Well, then.
How do you handle a principal like that?
Well, the principal obviously has to be sat down and advised of the law. I mean, for starters.
If the police were involved already.
If the police were involved already,
Take away the principal.
I mean, I would think that we would already be talking about suspending the principal and suspending the teacher.
I'm sorry, this would make me angry. Can I talk about this?
Yeah.
That's a felony.
Yeah.
It's a felony. I'm amending
Yes,
your
it
report.
is. So I want to know what the school board As a school board.
Well, I mean, ultimately, if the principal didn't do what he was supposed to do, he gets reprimanded or terminated.
So first of all, you have to know the hierarchy of
Or put in,
education.
I mean, if he's not the abuser, maybe not put in jail, but certainly.
He has
certainly-
no,
I'm talking about literally what happens.
Only the superintendent has authority over a principal.
So the school board can put the pressure
School
then
board
on the superintendent?
only can dictate to the superintendent dictates down. That is how it.
Ultimately, the school board is just the check on the
That's
superintendent.
it.
At the end of the
You would
day.
interact with the superintendent
Yeah,
then?
you'd interact with the superintendent, and you'd take care of the, if the principal needed to be terminated, you'd terminate him,
Unless, of course,
reprimanded,
it's the
the teacher would probably be in prison.
He's in the board, he's in all the meetings with you.
Which we
Like,
get.
you're on the
He's,
board.
exactly.
Actually, yes, the second question, which kind of expands on involved parents. You have a lot of parents that just, they send the kids to school,
They just
they're
go.
gone for the day,
Yeah.
they pay for it. Those parents, like my wife and I, who actually want to participate in our children's education, but the school says, no, not during school hours. How do we balance that?
Especially during.
We do everything we can do to change that so there's more parent volunteers at school during school hours. We change every policy we can possibly change. Once again, I'm one vote, but I'll vote for parents to be more involved and more on campus every single time I get the chance.
And with that, you're willing to take down some of the prison fences around the schools? And with that, are you willing to take some of those prison fences
I would
down?
love to take the prison fences down around the schools. Long before they went up, schools were about the safest place in the world for a kid to be every day. But then you have hyper politicization of Parkland, and all of a sudden schools look like little prisons. And it's absolutely lunacy anyway. The kids talk about how easy it would be if some psycho wanted to do something stupid. It's not like they're solid walls or anything like that. It's not like some idiot could drive a car through it or God only knows what else. It's all symbolism over substance, every lick of it.
Have you researched the decisions, actions, and guidance of the current board, and if you have, what stands out?
Somewhat, a little bit. I've done some research on the current board, and so far I can tell you that what I can tell is that they basically pat themselves on the back for passing budgets and spending money. So they haven't had a lot of controversial issues, but they did last year, and they were on the wrong side of it last year, and they were almost on the wrong side of it this year, except for 50 or 60 of us that showed up to stare at them at a workshop and make sure that they didn't run down the same path that Sarasota County went down.
Oh.
Must have just.
I feel really happy. Well, I've talked to him on the phone extensively, and this is in Charlotte County, not Lee, where I'm working now anyway. But whatever the case may be, the union in Florida is really
Batteries
not
don't
much.
That's why.
I would say it's an inhibitor to teachers, honestly, in some way, because when it comes to negotiation, it's like all they do is really negotiate a contract in a right-to-work state that is mediocre relatively to other union states. I'm not advocating. I'm just saying matter-of-factly, relative to states that have a strong union, not right-to-work state. It's very, very boilerplate.
I think the local unions have hurt themselves with the mask and the vaccine stuff.
Totally,
with teachers.
totally.
You know, because at least in Sarasota County, they decided that they were only going to represent part of their base, not the other part.
But that's the national
And-
union.
Yeah, I heard that.
Well, the SCTA was the same exact way. I mean, they dove in on the liberal policies and decided that we're not gonna support our union members who don't want to wear a mask, who
You're
don't.
right.
Yeah, so they've lost memberships. I mean, they've taken it on the chin.
Well, you're right in what you're saying, but what I'm saying is that when it comes to bottom up, they have limited power, but they're subsidized by the what are the two? The Federal Education Administration, the two major unions are in Charlotte County, and they pour money down, but the upward mobility for the contract negotiation is weak in Florida because of right-to-work state.
Would you promote and vote to allow cameras in the classroom to verify that the teachers are not pushing their agendas and are treating the children in a proper manner?
It's a really good question, and it's one that, you know, my wife and I have been talking about lately, because the state law doesn't say that the counties have to put cameras in. It just gives them the ability to do it. So on one hand, I would not want to work in conditions where I'm being videotaped all the time. On the other hand, when I put my dog in a daycare center, I can go online and I can see what in the heck's going on with my dog. And we're talking about kids. So ultimately, if their rules are in place, I would be in favor of it. The rules have to be very, very stringent about who can see the film, how they block out kids' faces, what they use it for, and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's like a body cam on a police officer. I think it would do more to help the police officer than to hurt if everybody's behaving the way they're supposed to. Not a fan of it. I don't particularly like it. But if it's a yes or no, I'm a yes lead.
Do you think the schools have gotten to that point where it's so bad that, are we going to be watching, is it the teachers or is it the interaction of different
and
kids?
that's why I think it's good they left it to the counties, because I think some schools probably have gotten that bad, and I think most even have not. So, and so I would say it's probably maybe 10%, 15% are bad enough to really warrant doing that kind of thing. And maybe there's some standards we can put in there to trigger it, and it doesn't have to be a county-wide thing. It can be a school-wide thing, or even a half a dozen classrooms if complaints warrant it. You know, I just think it's something that we have to be flexible on.
Well, and I think too, when you push parents out of the classrooms, you're asking for more trouble.
Agreed. I mean, if it was up to me, we'd have more parents in the classroom as volunteers, you'd have less trouble. And that solves the problem too, except when you don't have parents that want to volunteer. So
I have volunteered.
but this room is not the problem as far as volunteering.
Right.
So I think it's a fluid kind of situation, case by case.
Should the time limit for public speakers at school board meetings be 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or other?
5 minutes.
And you don't have to use it if you're not required to use it.
Can I have a rhetorical question?
Okay, I'm probably, if not one of the most anti-government people in the room, and I'm also a teacher. And the thing that is coming in my mind, just to push back on this a little bit, and this is contemplated, and I wonder how you respond, and I know you have an intimate knowledge of this side of the coin, is my biggest worry is not me being a teacher getting filmed, it's my students being inhibited. My students would be freaked out to speak freely if they were filmed. They wouldn't. Honestly, I've even said to them, like, oh, there's a camera pointing at like the door, and this is BS. In my classroom, because of various reasons, and I work in a very low-income area in the county, and also at my desk. You can imagine maybe why. And my students would not speak on the camera, and I worked in Charlotte County and Rotunda. They would freak out. I wouldn't want them to be inhibited, and also there's things going on at home that teachers find that the kids would be inhibited to share if their parents were watching.
No, and it's an awesome point too. It's a really, really difficult, tricky issue to navigate. It's not as cut and dry as, oh, let's just put cameras in all the classrooms, or no, we can't put them in any period. And so I think the way the state decided to pass this, or I don't think they passed it yet, is the best way to do it, because it pushes it down to where it needs, which is at the district level. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And you're right, there's going to be kids that won't speak freely because there's cameras.
Are there cameras on our buses? I don't know.
There's also going to be kids that are going to be empowered because there's cameras. So the kids that feel like they're getting bullied might not feel like, they feel like they've got, the cops are watching, and they can kind of say something, and if it doesn't work for their quote unquote bully, maybe they'll start talking. So
that's the hardest question. That's the hardest question I've heard all night.
It's a really tough one, and I don't think there's a one size fits all solution to it.
How do you feel about social promotion and mainstreaming, and does the county engage in it, or to what degree does the county engage in it?
Social
promotion means someone gets sent to the next grade but he really doesn't, or she doesn't.
Well, there's, you know, you're doing kids a disservice by pushing kids along.
Is that happening in Charlotte County?
I'm sure it is. You know it is. And it's actually, in some ways, it's worse than that. It's the bad side of lottery-funded bright futures is you've got teachers that are afraid to give kids grades that they deserve because they don't want to take away their college money either. So grades are inflated. Graduation rates are inflated.
Fail out of college.
You know?
COVID grades are inflated.
Huh?
COVID grades are.
COVID grades are wildly inflated. Well, how could you do anything else?
I want to rant about this administration.
But soon as they passed Bright Futures, Georgia did the same thing with Hope. All the GPAs started to come up because you didn't want to be the teacher that gave a kid a D instead of a B and cost him $5,000 scholarship his freshman year. It was inevitable to happen when government gets involved in things they shouldn't get involved in. That there's repercussions, unintended consequences. It always happens.
Would you use your bully pulpit as a board member to say, look, you know, we need to stop this. We're fooling ourselves and we're hurting the kids.
On day one. You know, when I graduated high school, you took 6 classes a day for 4 years, 24 credit hours. You needed 24 to graduate. If you screwed off in PE this last semester of your senior year, guess what? You didn't walk.
Right.
Okay? Right. I needed a 94% out of 100 to get an A. These kids get a 90, 80 for a B. That was a C.
Yeah.
And then weighted. All these AP classes and all these honors classes are weighted. You know, so I look at some of the GPAs today and I laugh. You know, and go, you know, my 325 was. It was a 399 in today's system. It would have. I can't tell you how many 92 Bs I had.